Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taiss and I'm really happy you're here. Today I draw Iuno from the game Wuthering Waves and will tell you fairy tales related to this character. As a character, Iuno, her appearance, her story and her abilities are heavily adorned with references to Greek and Roman gods and myths. The name Iuno or Juno is a name of an ancient Roman goddess, considered the protector and special counselor of the Roman state. But other than the name, I'm afraid Juno from the game has no more story references to the mythological Roman goddess Juno or Greek hero. However, when looking at Juno from the game, several other characters from Greek and Roman mythology immediately come to my mind. And first of all, it is Diana. Diana is an ancient Roman goddess of the moon and hunt, a protector of forests and wild animals. Diana is often depicted with a bow and arrows. Diana, as well as Roman Juno and Greek Hera, is associated with fertility and childbirth. She is a goddess of crossroads and the night, a virgin goddess having taken a vow of chastity. Her symbols include the bow and the crescent moon. She adorns her hair with a small crescent-shaped headdress. By the way, Diana is sometimes considered an aspect of a triple goddess, along with Luna, the moon, and grim and macabre Hecate, an underworld deity. Iuno from the game is closely associated with the moon, with her color palette, her clothing and hairstyle featuring multiple symbols of the moon disk and crescent moon. A strand of her hair on her forehead is in the shape of a crescent moon and her weapon being a crescent-shaped bow. So here we can see a beautiful reference to Diana. However, the mythological Diana has nothing to do with predicting the future. Who is a prophet and who foresees the future is Apollo, the brother of Diana. Apollo, the Greek and Roman god, is a young and beautiful god of music and poetry, prophecy and knowledge. A skilled lyre player, he is a patron of arts and culture and the leader of the muses. He is often depicted with the harp and laurel wreath. Iuno wears a laurel crown on her head, just like Apollo does. Also, Iuno's bow weapon is completely unusual. With its semicircular moon shape and 3 strings acting as a bowstring, it resembles a harp. And just like Apollo, Iuno has an ability to foresee the future. There are references to both gods, brother and sister. Moon goddess and archer huntress Diana, also known as Greek Artemis, and her brother Apollo, a god of music, archery, and prophecy. But that's not all. Looking at the Iuno in the game, with the 3 strings in her bow and her ability to change the future with it, the Moirai come to my mind. The Moirai are 3 Greek goddesses of fate, 3 goddesses who determine the life of every existing creature from birth to death. The first of the Moirai is Clotho. She is a spinner who spins the thread of life. The second of the Moirai, Lachesis, Elote. She measures the thread of life. And the last of the Moirai, Atropos, Inflexible. She cuts the thread of life, determining death. In the Roman pantheon, the equivalent of the Moirai were Parcae, three sisters named Nona, Decuma, and Morta. The Moirai controlled the destinies of people as well as the destinies of the gods and were inexorable. Even the gods can't compete with the fates, with the Moirai. But not to end my story on such a hopelessly sad note. Once, Apollo deceived the Moirai by getting them drunk with wine. Apollo persuades them to spare his friend's Admetus' life, and the Fates, who usually cannot be swayed, agreed, being intoxicated by the god of music and sun. However, only one certain condition remains. Admetus will be granted more years to live by the Fates, but only if someone is willing to die in his stead. This is the cruel price that must be paid. And Alcestis, Admetus' wife, agreed to go to the underworld, to the kingdom of the dead, instead of him. She offers to take her husband's place. And the tale would have ended very sadly if it weren't for Hercules, who was visiting the house of Admetus at the time. Hercules was deeply impressed by his host's kindness and learned of Alcestis' sacrifice. He descended into the underworld to confront Thanatos, the personification of death. After a fierce struggle, he wrestled Thanatos and forced him to release Alcestis' spirit. Hercules then brought Alcestis back to the land of the living to present her to Admetus. But Alcestis was unable to speak and remained pale. Hercules explained, and I wonder how he knew, that she would be silent and pale for 3 days before fully returning to life. And so it happened. Alcestis reunited with Admetus, and they lived together happily ever after. Characters who change the future use foresight to guide events. For example, as Doctor Strange, who sees millions of possible futures. He uses supernatural powers and the time stone to view numerous possibilities of future and make choices that guide the Avengers towards a more favorable outcome. Paul Atreides from Dune and Luke Skywalker from Star Wars see the future and then act to change that they foresee. The future is full of an immeasurable numbers of possibilities, so mysterious and at the same time so frightening. Just like the butterfly effect, a situation where a small, insignificant action has huge, unpredictable consequences over time. This small, insignificant event has the potential to change the entire course of history. But that's another story. This is the third time I draw Iuno. When you know the character, his clothes and his story well, the work goes much faster and easier. I started making a sketch for this piece when I was working on Iuno's previous art. I'll leave a link to the video about it in the description below. Every time, with each new drawing, you face new challenges and solve new problems. But if you plan your work in advance, from sketch to color palette, from lighting sources to composition and rendering, when everything becomes easier. But it's only if you don't experiment and don't take risks to allow yourself to be carried away by the creative process and move only where you are accustomed and do not try to get off the beaten path. In all other cases, you still have to face new difficulties and solve new problems. The sketch I originally made for this piece was great. Iuno floated beautifully in the vast white canvas, as often happens when sketching. However, when I tried cropping the edges of the canvas to determine the composition, I realized I was creating a lot of empty space on the page, a lot of empty background. I realized that with this pose of Iuno, I create a large empty background space at the level of her legs, and I literally don't know what I'll draw there. Seriously, I have too less imagination or desire to draw a lot of background. Well, jokes aside, I wanted a post to be more dynamic and more informative, so less empty space and more information from the character. So I changed the pose by slightly changing the position of her legs so that they were located closer to the center of the painting. In this way, I pulled the entire composition closer to the center and significantly reduced the empty background space. And generally, I like what I got. Thank you so much for watching. If you love my art and like this type of content, please like this video and subscribe so as not to miss my next videos. All the links to my social media you can find in the description below. See you very soon with the new art and have a wonderful day or night. Bye bye!